Okay, everybody, it's 9:31. So we will start off this third webinar, in fact, in a series of 5 on the GOOSE project. We already organized some webinars on Colombia and Chile. I mean the public procurement in those countries. And the last one was about public procurement in Norway. So I'm here to moderate this session today. I have some practicalities to mention to all of you. You will not be able to open your mic and also not be able to open your camera. This makes life a little bit easier for all of us, for the presenters and all the people following at home, wherever you might be, because we are talking about public procurement in Japan. For the Europeans, it's the morning session. For Asian people, it's already a little bit later in the day, so more in the late afternoon. And perhaps people are even following in the morning, very, very early somewhere else in the world. So this is a very European and international project in which we want to focus on a lot of areas. So if you have questions, please ask them via the chat. The end of the webinar, you will be able, we will answer them by our experts. They will do their utterly best to reply all of these questions. If there would be questions a bit too specific or too focused on your business, we can take it up after the webinar on a one-to-one basis. So all of this is possible. So we are open and we are free to guide you through the whole process. So that was it from my side. I'm representing, in fact, Flanders Investment and Trade. We are 3 people today from, more even, with the Japanese section also aboard, of course, of Flanders Investment and Trade. But I leave it up now to my dear friend Victor Merke from Axio, which is another partner, which is the leading partner, in fact, of this consortium. And he will introduce you to the GOOSE project and tell you in short what it's all about. So I wish you a very, very fruitful webinar, and I will moderate you through this one. So good luck, and the floor is yours, Victor.
Thank you, Arnaud, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on public procurement in Japan. I will take just a few minutes, because as you can see, we have a long program and very interesting program with highly specialized speakers, and I would like to thank all of them to be here and to share with all of you all their views and comments about the public procurement in Japan. Just a few words on the GOOSE project. The GOOSE project is an EU-funded project that it's already, actually the objective is to explore. Well, actually we are already exploring public procurement opportunities in 6 non-EU markets of public procurement opportunities for European SMEs. We've chosen, as you can see, these 6 countries: Chile and Colombia in Latin America, Japan and Vietnam in Asia, and Norway and Serbia here in Europe. And we put the focus in 4 sectors: smart cities, smart health, ICT, and green economy. And there you can see all the segments, because they are, let's say, broad sectors. So when we talk about smart cities, we're talking about smart buildings, smart energy, smart infrastructure. For example, in green economy, you are talking about air quality, circular economy, and so on. Same with ICT. It's not only communication infrastructure. It's also IT services, telecommunication devices, cybersecurity, and so on. We have a website that it's already running. I think that one of the speakers that will follow me will share their screen and will show you the website, but it's www.projectgoose.eu. So you are more than welcome, and we invite you to visit the website, to register there. It's a free registration, and you will have a huge amount of information, of news, and tenders on these 6 countries and these 4 sectors. So again, we invite you to visit the website, to register, and to find out the most suitable opportunity for you in our website. That's it from my side. And I give the floor to Mr. Dick de Ruyver, the economic representative, and Mr. Vincent Goosens from Flanders Investment and Trade in Parliament Investment and Trade office in Tokyo. So, Vincent, the floor is yours.
Yes, well, it's not Vincent here. It's Dick de Ruyver from Flanders Investment and Trade in Tokyo. I hope you can hear me. Yes.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we are bringing you a presentation on support for tender participation in Japan, the GOOSE project in Japan. Well, first slide, please. Yeah, suppose it's coming. Here it is. No, that's one too far. Yeah, the GOOSE project in Japan. In fact, there are 3 pillars that you have to take into account when we talk about public tenders in Japan. First, the first pillar is, of course, the economic partnership agreement between the EU and Japan, which was implemented in February 2019. Within that agreement, there is a chapter 10, and this is particularly on public procurement. So the idea is through the EPA to make it easier for EU companies to participate to tenders in Japan and vice versa. Advantage of chapter 10 of EPA is that the number of Japanese public procurement agencies that has to apply or has to implement the EPA rules and also the rules of the World Trade Organization has gone up with more than 100 agencies. So there are more public procurement tenders that are open for companies from the EU. Now, of course, negotiating and signing an EPA, this has been done by the European Commission, but negotiating and signing alone is not enough. The implementation of that agreement in Japan has to be checked, has to be followed up, and that's of course a task of the EU delegation in Tokyo. The EU delegation is representing the EU Commission in Japan, but the EU delegation can of course use some extra help, and this is coming, for example, from the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation, which I consider as the second pillar here in Japan when it comes to public procurement. The EU Center is really a knowledge center for public procurement in Japan, not only public procurement, but it has a very good desk on both taxes and public procurement in Japan. The center has published a lot of market studies on public procurement according to sector, and also did already a survey among the Japanese public procurement officers to see whether they are aware of the EPA and the chapter 10 in there, and how much they take that into account when they publish tenders. Now, the third pillar is the GOOSE project in Japan. This is being led here in Japan by Flanders Investment and Trade, by the Tokyo office. So we are a kind of project leader among other trade promotion organizations. And the idea is to connect the small and medium enterprises of the EU with the public tender market in Japan. Now, trade promotion organizations like Flanders Investment and Trade, we are used to, I would say, connect, in our case, Flemish companies with potential Japanese partners, and to open up the market for them. And in fact, for the public tender market in Japan, we are doing the same. It's really our bread and butter, I would say. I'm not going to say more. I'm going to leave the details in the hands of my colleague, our international trade officer in our Tokyo office, and that's Vincent Goosses. Vincent, your turn.
Yes, thank you very much, Dirk. Hello, everyone. So as Dirk mentioned, I am the International Trade Officer at Flanders Investment and Trade Tokyo. My name is Vincent GOOSE, and today I will be talking to you about our GOOSE website. So first of all, the Japan public tender market. Well, why are we trying to get more companies into this market? Well, the total value, for example, estimated in 2017 was 698 billion euros. If you compare this to the GDP of the Netherlands, which is 738 billion euros, you can really see how large this market is. And so if we then look further at the different government bodies that are doing public procurement, we can see that, for example, the central government has 21.47 billion euros in tenders that they put out every year, which is half goods, half services. But the spend on foreign products and services is 5.4%, which is not that high. It's higher in the European Union. So trying to increase this number can have a huge impact in the economic performance of a lot of EU countries, which is why we try to tackle this project. Now, where can tenders be found? Well, the main Japanese sources are the sources that you can see on this slide. So first, it's the JETRO public procurement website. And in brackets here, it says the official EPA source. Actually, the EPA stipulated in the chapter 10 that there needs to be a single source for English tender information in the Japanese market. And the JETRO website was designated as this.
Vincent, sorry, yes. We're not seeing slides. We're not seeing any presentation.
Oh, really?
At least not myself. Yeah. So I suppose the right.
I think the problem is on your side, Oriol, because we are
see
seeing it.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Then sorry. Okay.
No problem.
Okay.
Yes, so I'll continue then. Yes, so JETRO, this website was designated as a single source for English tender information in the Japanese market. Now, JETRO is the abbreviation for the Japan External Trade Organization and is a trade promotion agency similar to Flanders Investment and Trade or AKIO or the other trade TPOs present here today. Tenders can be searched for on the website in according to language, so in either Japanese or English. The kind of EPA, so you have EPAs for purchase of goods and services, but there are also tenders, for example, requests for comments, requests for materials. So they can also the tenders can also be sorted according to this kind of tender, and then according to the government body putting out the tender. So that's for the general public procurement website. The further portal is the Chotatsu portal Japan. This website is also both in Japanese and English, but it only contains tenders for the central government. And tender content in English is quite limited. Most of the time it's a summary in English with a lot of Japanese context. This website also allows for some tenders for download of tender documents, including specifications and contract matters. And then the third one is what Dirk mentioned earlier. So the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation also has a help desk on public procurement. The aim here is to support the European SMEs in commercial endeavors in Japan. And so these services are all free. And these can also be described too, so you can get an update on most relevant tenders in the Japanese market on a monthly basis. Then introduction of the GOOSE website, a little bit more practical. So we will take a look at the website later, but first of all, here I want to just give an overview of what the website consists of. So this is the address here, projectgoose.eu, as Victor mentioned earlier. And the website has 4 main parts. So one part is the overview of the tenders. These include tenders not only for Japan, but for all of the countries included in this GOOSE project. So that's Vietnam, Colombia, Chile, Serbia, Norway, and then Japan as well. And also all of the industries are covered. So which is green economy, ICT, so smart cities and smart health. You can subscribe to this website and then you can get alerts according to the tags that you have subscribed to. So it's also very handy to get an update on relevant tenders in the Japanese market. Or not even the Japanese market, all of the markets that are covered. Then there is a news section. This also this section includes news relevant for public procurement in all of the industries and countries covered. This news can also be subscribed to, and you can also get alerts relevant to your company. Then there's information on the 6 countries and the 4 sectors in a section called About GOOSE. So this is information on the size of the market, characteristics, and so on. And then lastly, there is a library, which includes a lot of documentation. For example, webinars. Upcoming webinars are announced on the website, and past webinars, their recording and slides and other information is uploaded to the library website. And then there are also the country facts sheets, which are facts sheets with information on all of the countries that are looked at in the project. But as I mentioned, we'll be taking a look at the website later for more practical information. So looking at the tender market in Japan, we have identified 2 main challenges for entering the market. The first challenge is the tender content. So information on English is quite limited, and information on contract matters, specifications is most of them only available in Japanese. So this is one of the biggest hurdles probably for a lot of companies. And I see that there was a question on the tender proposal, but tender proposals are also requested to be submitted in Japanese only. So that is quite a hurdle for European countries. Then contact data. Most of the tenders include only an address and a phone number. With no information like an email or a fax number. Now, if you look more, and sometimes even in the Japanese summary of tenders, there is information like an email address, but this is not always translated into English. And then language is, so the language is then Japanese with an English summary. Now here, there's also quite, the tender content in itself might also be very customized towards the Japanese market, meaning that specifications are really looked at from a point of view of the Japanese domestic market, which means that for European countries, the specifications not always apply to their products. Now here we have taken notice of the notice of request for information and the notice of request for submission of materials, and then to a lesser extent the notice of request for comments, which are kinds of tenders where there is not yet a purchase being made by the government body, but they are showing their specifications that they have drawn up for a certain system to vendors to see if the vendors can match that those specifications. And during this phase, which is a phase actually before a purchase of goods tender, it is important for European companies to participate, because this would allow them to have an impact and influence on the further on the tender content moving forward. So that's it for tender content. And the second challenge is that a Japanese partner is necessary to is necessary to enter the Japanese market, not only for public procurement, but especially in the case of public procurement. A lot of tenders ask for a representation or a legal entity in the Japanese market. So in this case, a representative is necessary for tender participation. And also the language of the bid, again, needs to be submitted in Japanese, for which obviously you would, a lot of European countries, SMEs, would have to rely on a Japanese partner. Now, the possibilities for a Japanese partner are, for example, Japanese companies that are currently already active in the public tender market and that are using foreign products, services, or technology, so are already active in import. For the GOOSE project in Japan, we have been working on identifying companies like this, and we have found 230 companies as possible partners for European companies in public procurement in the Japanese market. So when looking for a Japanese partner, we really advise to contact your trade promotion officer in Japan, as they will have a network with relevant contacts here. Okay, then lastly, I will be sharing my screen to show the GOOSE website. I think you can all now see my screen, which is showing the GOOSE website. So as I mentioned earlier, we had the 4 parts of the website, which is the tender part first. The tender part here, it gives an overview of relevant tenders that have been published recently. You can search by category, which are the categories of different industries that we are looking at in this project, and then also the countries. So the 6 countries that I mentioned earlier. If we take a look at one of the tenders, so they have a title, a small text with information on where to find the necessary information. There's also which type of contracts. The one tender we're looking at now is a purchase of goods. So the government body that is putting out this tender is looking to purchase goods or services. There is a project contact and also a GOOSE contact, and then some feedback from GOOSE, which we mention for which kind of companies this tender would be relevant. So when we really try to get as much information as possible on the project contacts and also on the descriptions that are necessary for this tender. So taking a look at this tender will give you also an example of what kind of tenders are out there in all of the markets that we are looking at, and also what the requirements are for these tenders. So this will probably be the most important part of the website for most of you. Otherwise, there is a news section with also news from all different countries. Then this is the About GOOSE section that I mentioned, where we are talking about the different trade promotion agencies that are involved in this project, and then also the markets, and then the library. Lastly, so here you can see the upcoming webinars show the webinar of today. So here will also the recording for this webinar as well as information will be uploaded to this website. Okay, this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Vincent, for sharing all this information with all of us. It's indeed very highly, I would everybody to register. In fact, I am not finding the right word for the moment, but I would indeed ask all people attending this webinar to register on the website, because this gives you plenty more information to look at and to learn more about the markets in which you are interested in. I also would like to emphasize, this was the word in fact I was looking for, emphasize that this is a project done by 4 partners. Perhaps this wasn't really said by Victor, because we have Flanders Investment Trade, we have Axio, we have Estonia also in the consortium, and we have a partner based in Croatia, which will cover the Serbian market. And also today we have companies entering this webinar coming from all areas of the world, mainly from Spain, Japan, Colombia, Chile, perhaps even, and also Croatia and so on. So this is the ideal time to learn from each other, and perhaps afterwards we can also share some, if everybody can agree on that, the information of other participants taking part of this webinar. And I also would like to tell you that in the next half of the year we will focus on the sectors. So this could open even more opportunities for all of you. And we are also considering organizing ad hoc roundtables. So between companies and perhaps on the other side, procurement specialists, and so sharing information with all of you. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Likkel Griek. He is in fact based at the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation. He has been there for quite some years now, and he will share with all of us some do's and don'ts when bidding for government contracts in Japan, and he is indeed the expert to do that. So Mr. Griek, Likkel, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arnold. I hope you can hear me. I'm still waiting for control of the
yeah, we can hear you.
of the
We hear you.
presentation. Good. I still can't control the presentation to the slides that I had prepared for you. Let's see.
Yeah, it can take a while, but it should be okay any moment. Otherwise, yeah.
There it is.
The errors, yeah. It's Teams.
Okay.
Teams has a day off.
Okay, thank you. Well, once again, apologies. Thank you for inviting me. Today, I want to, in the next 20 to 30 minutes, I would like to shed some light on aspects of government or public procurement in Japan, and also explain a bit more about Chapter 10 of the EPA, and then finish off with some do's and don'ts based upon our experience at the Japan Tax and Public Procurement Help Desk over the past few years. Well, there's a slight difference between government procurement and public procurement, of course, in the sense that not all procurement that governments make is necessarily is public. In particular, products that involve national security are usually not done with fully public procedures. They don't want to make public that they're going to buy new stealth jet fighters, etc. Also in the current times, you see that the share of government procurement, so where national security considerations are playing a role, is growing, and more governments effectively blocking participation of foreign suppliers. A good example is, for example, telecommunication equipment made by Chinese manufacturers. Similar to the United States and Japan, also the market has been closed effectively. During this presentation, I'm going to use primarily the term public procurement because this represents the bulk of procurement activities by government organizations. That means basically just to refresh your memory, public procurement, they are purchases of everything that public organizations need to fulfill their responsibilities to their citizens, and that also at the same time needs to ensure fair and equal access for suppliers, and also ensure that the taxpayers get the best value for money. That's in theory, as we will see in practice, it's a bit more complex. Mr. De Ruijver and Mr. Goossens already mentioned some figures about the size of the public procurement market in Japan already, but for individual companies, billion-dollar figures do not say that much, and also the figures that the Japanese government publishes are mostly unreliable and not really comparable, because they use many different definitions and scopes. I'm always a bit reluctant to use figures about market size. I would rather use this to explain a bit the Japanese public procurement market with explaining some distinctions. So on the left side, you see WTO tenders, which is in value about 35% of the expenditures. And on the other hand, domestic tenders. Well, WTO tenders are regulated by international agreements that should ensure equal treatment by foreign to ensure equal treatment to foreign companies as well. In the case of Japan, that means that they provide English summaries. It was already also explained in the previous presentation. The Japanese government has some longer lead times, so more time to prepare bids. Still, it's very short in many cases, but it's a bit longer than what is standard in Japan. In domestic tenders, they want to have bids within 2 weeks in many cases. Should be aware that not all the international agreements do not cover all organizations. So there are still plenty of government entities, in particular at the local level, as we will see, that are excluded from any international agreement. And also, of course, not all products and services are included in international agreements. So certain categories are not. For example, it is not possible for foreign companies to bid for international development projects, for example, or deliver goods there, done by the Japan International Cooperation Agency. And then on the other hand, we have the domestic tenders. Well, local rules, so they can they can set conditions that you have a local office, etc., and or even exclude if the majority shareholder is a foreigner. Then they can exclude you as well. There you will find no English language whatsoever. Well, then another distinction that is good to know. Let me see if I can. Is the different levels of government. So central government has the lowest threshold. So the distinction between, similar to Europe, distinction between internationally regulated tenders and domestic tenders is done on the basis of thresholds. Is one of the things there. There's a distinction is made between on the left goods and services procurement, which has a threshold currently of about 120,000 euros, and public procurement, public construction works, public works construction, where it is 5.4 million. So, and central government that includes ministries, national agencies, and a list of government corporations that are listed in the WTO agreement on government procurement in Annex 3. Then sub-central government in Japan incorporates 47 prefectures and their local offices, organizations that fall under their jurisdiction, and designated cities, and that includes Tokyo. And well, you should keep in mind that Tokyo is, of course, quite large. That because the metropolitan needs to provide services to 31 million people, which is close to a third of the populace in Japan. And I'm going too quickly here. Sorry. And then of course they have higher thresholds, so less contracts are offered to the international market, and you can see the thresholds here. And then finally, local government, as I said, they don't have to do anything with the international market. To continue, well, as it was already been explained, since February 1st, 2019, the EPA was concluded. And that meant that European companies could have access to a larger proportion of the Japanese government market, and concretely that it added a number of organizations, as you can see here, which were also already mentioned, so for EU businesses. More government entities became available as a potential client. Then look at some aspects of the EPA. The unique thing about the EPA is that the public procurement commitments are based upon the already existing WTO agreement on government procurement, the GPA. So if within the WTO framework changes would be made, that would automatically also affect the EPA. In many previous international trade agreements, the parties would set up separate arrangements. Well, the main aspects: an increased scope, so larger market access, also larger sectoral access, in particular railway sector, with the removal of operational safety clause. EU companies in that sector are now able to participate in tenders for railway infrastructure and rolling stock. Another sector is electric power infrastructure related to production, transport, and distribution of electricity. And then also a number of additional service categories, well, this is for central government, that were added to the agreement. So these contracts where these kinds of services were required, are currently also open for EU businesses. And the same happened. The same arrangements were made at the sub-central government level as well. But you can also look that up at the JETRO website. And then also the EPA Chapter 10 includes regulatory agreements that deals with the assessment of capabilities, requiring ensuring that requiring prior experience in Japan, which happened in the past, is no longer required. So if an EU company comes for a contract and the Japanese side says that, yeah, you need to have experience in Japan, then the EU company can point towards the EPA agreement and say, no, that's not the case. You are not. We've agreed that you could not require prior experience in Japan. Also, arranged with recognition of EU test reports, and also clarification of review procedures in case of issues during a procedure. So yeah, the EU Japan EPA offers European businesses additional opportunities, and also some assurances more assurances to compete for government contracts on an equal basis. That's, I think, how I would like to summarize it. But of course, many challenges remain. I've tried to mold it into one main challenge, and that is, well, for EU businesses, the challenge remains how to carve out business opportunities in a highly regulated business environment, conducted exclusively in Japanese and managed primarily by risk-averse public servants. Well, the highly regulated business environment has of course to do with the quite voluminous paperwork that comes with the bidding process, and yeah, you need to. We will come to that later. You need to be prepared to work with that. Then in Japanese, you will have to deal with a linguistic barrier and a cultural barrier as well, despite it's all being paperwork. And also, well, risk-averse public servants. Japan is although it on the outside it looks as a very international economy, at the government level, there is still a very strong local mindset, and also the people that you deal with. You will have to tackle the lack of international skills. So paperwork and bureaucracy a bit more in detail. Well, the things that a company will need to deal with is get the right qualifications. Japanese government organizations will require a registration as a supplier in advance before you can place a bid. And those are, well, a bit unnecessary. Sorry, why is my sheet disappearing? Sorry. They do not really add anything, but yeah, it's a bureaucratic hurdle that has been erected through the years, and they are one of the things that you can do in advance before you really tackle the market. Licenses is of course something that you need to deal with. In particular, if you're involved in construction of public works, technical licenses need to be approved and checked by government agencies. That is part of the deal. Many contracts will require things like ISO 14000, 9000, etc. And also you need to get acquainted with if you are in the sales of tangible products. You need to yourself to get acquainted with Japan industrial standards. Then Well, linguistic barriers, it was already mentioned in the previous presentation as well. Very limited English information. All information needs to be prepared in Japanese. And in most cases, communication in Japanese is required as well. So they do not accept communication in English due to the fact that most procurement officers don't speak English. Then cultural barriers. Your counterparts in most cases will not be used to deal directly with non-Japanese people that don't speak Japanese. Also think of the perspective. Europe is a faraway place seen from Japan. And if suddenly a European company shows up, that might cause some anxiety. And also there is a strong tendency of buy Japanese already. There is what we see is that non-Japanese made products are sometimes treated with some suspicion. Then also a local mindset, as it is related to the previous one, but procurement for most government entities in Japan is very locally organized. Most of the regular suppliers have offices around the corner, and there is also personal contact. So that's how the marketing is being done. You should also keep in mind, in particular, if you participate in larger projects at local level, is that it's taxpayers' money going abroad if you are trying to win a bid. So there is a political risk for politicians involved or public servants involved in larger contracts that have some standing within a more local community. Of course, a non-Japanese supplier is also regarded as a higher risk. That's why so much attention is being paid to after service, and that can be quite demanding. And also in the local mindset, well, in governments they tend to be skeptical towards innovative, out-of-the-box solutions. So specifications are very, very detailed and based upon existing products. So even for Japanese new companies, it's very difficult to secure business. How much time do I have left? Let's see.
So 7 more minutes, Likko.
Okay, good. Well, what would be required? Well, first thing, what we see, if you want to be successful, you have to start with a long-term commitment. Short one-time business opportunity, I think that's not feasible. It will not be awarded. So a long-time commitment is a must. Also patience and perseverance. It will not, most likely not, you will not be successful in one go, but through trial and error, you can hone your skills in bidding for contracts. So that requires some patience and perseverance. Products that have services that have proven track records will probably have better chances in securing contracts in Japan. So if you have a good track record back in Europe, and you can show that will enhance your chances of winning a contract in Japan. Then also thorough preparations that you can do in advance, have them ready. Don't wait for an opportunity, but prepare, such as the supplier qualifications, licenses, translations of standard documents such as your financials, and also think about how you're gonna do your service, your after service system. Well, a bit on EU companies already supplying to the public sector in Japan. There are actually few active as direct supplier, and they are mostly EU headquartered multinationals. Well, I've listed a few here in some of the sectors that we have encountered over the years. Well, they're all very familiar names that many of you will probably know. Another and another category of companies that supply to the public sector are EU companies offering unique products, and they are usually awarded. Yeah, that's of course what every business wants, to have a monopoly more or less and be the only supplier of a product, and be the single or designated supplier of a certain product or service. You can think here, for example, providers of science information, Elsevier's or Springer. They have unique services that are not found anywhere else. EU companies, and then another category, and that's probably the majority, are companies that provide via distributors or agents, and that's of course in particular done by SMEs, because that will take away, as we will see in the next slide, some of the issues, the challenges that the practical challenges that you have to deal with. What we see is that cross-border business, which is to a certain extent also what the European Commission was aiming for, without local representation, that is still not feasible. You need to be present in Japan in some form, although they will not require everywhere a legal presence in Japan. They want to have somebody to call, very practically. That's what it boils down to. So yeah, what's the best approach then? I've listed a few advantages and disadvantages of two approaches. Like, are you going to work through a distributor, or are you going to set up an own shop? I think it's also really dependent on what kind of product you want to offer to Japanese government organizations, to the public sector. And what you want to achieve. If you work through a distributor, it goes quicker, lower investment, less language barriers. They will take care of regulatory barriers, but it will be at the cost of lower margins, so you will not be competitive in price. And many of the government tenders in Japan are still lowest price, so it will take a big chunk of your business. So if the government sector is your primary target of business, then perhaps a distributor might not be the first choice, because if the lowest price is the decisive factor, you will be too expensive. In particular, if the domestic market is offering the same product. Of course, you have less marketing control insight into your market, and it will be difficult to localize and develop a brand. Also, you will not be able to have contact with end users. And if you work with a large trading company, you will be one of many. You will probably half an A4 page in a catalog, which is not very helpful for your business, because large trading companies are not really business developers. They have their fixed set of clients. Own shop will mean that you have higher margins in the long run. You can develop your own market knowledge, and you also have the opportunity to localize and develop your brand. But it comes at a higher upfront investment, and it takes a longer market development stage. And of course, there is a risk, a higher investment risk. So yeah, marketing, I think it was already mentioned by Mr. GOOSE as well in the request for comments, but the thing is, there aren't many requests for comments published for larger tenders in Japan. And if they are published, they are often deal with lease contracts, and they will probably be more like asking for invoices, like how much is it? I think marketing should be more in influencing the drafting of specifications. So requests for information, market information, which are also rare, but I think in other ways, you need to do it in other ways as well. And yeah, who to target, that is also dependent on what kind of product and service you are planning to offer to the public sector. Think, for example, if decision makers are more interested in outcome of what is being procured, while end users will focus more on functionality. So For example, an example is decision makers, a company from the Netherlands that has successfully marketed solar panel joint purchase platforms to Japanese government organizations, and they targeted in particular the decision makers because they were offering something like, well, that helped the municipalities they targeted with reaching social development goals. So they were folks. They set up an own shop in Japan with a Japanese sales agent to target local governments, and they've been quite successful. If you deal with end users who are interested in functionality, then you might want to approach the end users. And well, for example, we've seen in the R&D sphere that companies would contact scientists that are working in a certain field. So that's a whole different way of doing it. Well, procurement officers also might sometimes be wise to approach because they are in charge of the process itself. And of course, as such, they also have influence on the drafting process in tender specifications. I think I need to hurry a bit, but I'm almost there. Then opportunities. Well, what we see at the moment is the good opportunities, sectorally speaking, is IT. And there's a big shortage on IT personnel in Japan as well. And there is a further problem that the Japanese government has set up in the last 2 years because they couldn't set up programs to deal with COVID, a digital transformation or DX program that needs to rapidly bring the government online basically and update everything, and it was all scattered. So there's a lot of things going on in the IT. R&D sector is traditionally always a strong sector where European suppliers have a good standing and are good opportunities in research facilities and universities. Medical and care is also here, but usually if you are in that sector, that it works differently, because if you have something that medical solution, you'll have to undergo a quite lengthy process to being allowed to enter the market, and it's not possible without having a good strong partner in Japan. Public works is also what I mentioned here. Japan has quite a big of an issue with aging infrastructure. And because they had their boom 50-60 years ago, and then they built a lot of things in a very short period of time, and those are now aging. So there's a lot of things going on there as well. In particular, if you have cost-cutting, innovative solutions, the government will be interesting. And of course, also in combination with IT, all the sectors will be interesting. Then another thing, an opportunity I want to mention here, is that many of the contracts that are issued by Japanese government organizations end up with only one company showing up, one bidder problem. And many of government organizations have already have had to formulate policies in order to increase the number of bidders for their contracts. And well, if there's only one bidder, that can also mean that there are very few suppliers. So if you are targeting the public sector, some research into this and how that relates to your product is advisable as well. In conclusion, do not expect quick results when you target the Japanese public sector. A local presence will be required in one form, and it's good to think thoroughly about in what way you want to do it. And what we also say is that that trial and error has its merits, and that it's good to hone your skills and give it a try, and see what is required, and learn from it, and then become good at it and win contracts. With that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And here is, it was already mentioned earlier, here is our website. And if you have further questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Likkel, for this detailed information. And indeed, I would emphasize that the last slide tells it a bit all. Don't expect very quick results. Trial and error is perhaps the right summary. You have to try out and then find out how it could work. And finding a local partner, I think this is one of the most important to-dos for the moment being, as exporting without any representation in Japan is, let's say, not possible for the moment being. So actually, I would like to introduce the next speaker, who is Mr. Ilkka Saarinen. He is the Counselor at the Trade section of the delegation of the EU to Japan, especially focusing on public procurement. He will share with us a specific sector in which he has quite a broad knowledge in. That's a sector of offshore wind energy projects. And as you have seen, smart energy solutions is one of the focus area of GOOSE. This presentation will fall perfectly in the scope of our project. So Mr. Saarinen, without further ado, we will go through the PowerPoint presentation for you, as we agreed, as you are attending from far away and in a remote area, I would imagine. But today everything is possible, perhaps in a way thanks to COVID. So some positive results there at the end. Thank you very much, Mr. Ilkka Saarinen. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to speak with you about the offshore wind sector. You may go straight to the first slide, please, or the next slide. I could kind of like continue from where Likle left off. Likle had the list of sectors which are very lucrative for European operators in Japan, and certainly offshore wind sector is one of those. However, the difference being here that the way how offshore wind projects are being tendered, it's not covered by public procurement obligations under the EPA or WTO. So, but it's kind of an interesting case study anyway to how tendering is conducted. And when I was listening to earlier presentations, particularly those by Vincent and Likle, I mean, many similarities there. So I hope this will give you an insight how the Japanese authorities construct these, what kind of hurdles there are, what kind of challenges they are facing, particularly in a new sector like this one. So I guess most of you don't know this sector, at least in Japan. So just a little bit of background why this is important at the moment. So 2019, the Japanese government then, so which was run by Prime Minister Abe, decided that they need to get rid of over dependence on fossil fuels as a basis for their energy mix, and they figured that sectors like wind power are the ones which will increase the amount of renewables in their energy mix. And offshore wind power, so OWP, that stands for offshore wind power, was one of the areas where what they needed to do was basically to set up a regulatory system of scratch, and also local value chains, which they didn't have for this sector. They had it for onshore, but not offshore wind. And they set quite ambitious targets. By 2013, 10 gigawatts. And that's basically 100 times more than they had when they set this target. And by 2014, I mean, even more, what you can see there. And the target for 2020 was 20% in the energy mix of renewables, and 36 to 38% by 2030. So quite an increase, and of course even more towards then the ultimate target, carbon neutrality in 2050. In addition to these targets, so let's say the sustainability targets, they want to create local value chains, which they don't have for this sector at the moment. They want to lower the price of particularly renewable energy. And if we look at all these targets, they're quite difficult to achieve at the same time. So if you want to have low price, if you want to have local content, and you want to have speed, these are relatively difficult to put together. Next slide, please. So how are they doing this? They have nominated basically 23 zones so far, mainly on the main island of Honshu. 6 designated zones, so where they basically know what they are doing and on what timetable, just about, candidate zones and preparatory zones. So 23 zones altogether have been nominated, and they are looking for new ones at the moment. As I said, these are done in a way, the tenders are done in a way which are not under the regimes of WTO or EPA government procurement rules. The evaluation guidelines, there's 50% emphasis on price and 50% on non-price. And if we compare how these similar tenders are carried out in EU member states, it's usually either 100% price or like 70% price at least. And then the non-price factors have a smaller role. Some problems emerged already when we started looking at these issues 2 years ago. So treatment of overseas track record. EU companies are the market and the technology leaders, but they were discriminated in the first part of the first drafts of the tendering guidelines, and actually in the first round of tendering as well. We have managed, in cooperation with the Japanese authorities, to change this, so at least on paper the discrimination has been removed there. Then there are quite suspect local economic impact requirements. I didn't want to write down the naughty expression of local content requirements, but they are something which go close to that and something that we are monitoring all the time. So the requirement to have local content in order to become a successful bidder. There's lack of clarity, lack of transparency, measurability of the criteria, all the things where Europe is clearly ahead of Japan. Then when I was listening to the previous presentations, I mean, issues related to language, for example, which I think Vincent mentioned, over-regulation, difficulties regarding standards and certification. So their standards are not there yet. I mean, because as I explained, they are setting up this sector from the scratch, so they don't even have the matching standards. And this is something where we are working on them and trying to convince them to use European standards, which would obviously then be beneficial to everybody. Next slide, please. So the first round, as I explained, has taken place already. And that was launched in late 2020, and the results came out at Christmas Eve 2021, which was quite nice timing. And these were about 3 or 4, depending how you count them, tenders in Akita and Chiba prefectures. And in all of those, a consortium led by Mitsubishi prevailed. And there were also European companies there and many Japanese companies. And they prevailed because of lowest price, clearly lowest price, much lower than anybody was expecting. The expectancy was maybe around 20 yen per megawatt hour, but in these tenders, it was between 12 and 16 yen per kilowatt hour, so clearly lower. And if we think about earlier trials that they had and like proto projects where the price had been around 30 yen per megawatt hour, this was really, really a low price. And here are some of the reasons why it's been analyzed. I mean, this is something where Mitsubishi hasn't come out and told us why they were able to table such a low price. But here are some of the reasons. So late commercial operation date, up to 4 years lower than their competitors, their own financing compared to others being forced to take financing from the outside, PPAs, which are power purchasing agreements, so they were able to sell like green energy directly to certain big players, and low-priced inputs. Particularly, they bought a big bunch of GE turbines, so American turbines. Again, here Europeans lost, and got them at a very, very affordable rate. Obviously, the competitors, both European and local, were disappointed. Others were counting on non-price factors, so on local experience, local contacts, and also speed. and they were clearly miscalculating these things. There was a concern among the authorities that companies, both Japanese and foreign, would pull out. So they decided to suspend the second round, which has already been launched, and where the deadline for submissions would have been in early June, actually in a week and a half's time, and to try to figure out how to modify the tendering guidelines so that it would be more companies who would be successful, and also that companies wouldn't just leave, and they would be hopefully better build-up of local value chains. Next slide, please. So they are looking at these guidelines. Here's the list of things that they are looking at. So the price non-price ratio is going to remain the same. There was a lot of pressure to put more emphasis on non-price factors, obviously for the reason that some of the competitors were afraid that if Mitsubishi participates in the second round as well, and they are able to table as low price as they did on the first round, then that they would win again unless you put more emphasis on the non-price factors. But that's apparently not going to happen, although these are just proposals and not official decisions yet. And there will be higher appreciation of an early COD, so commercial operation date. So in order to avoid the situation in the first round where Mitsubishi basically just kicked the can down the road and everybody else was, you know, trying to be like introducing the projects earlier. One good thing is that there's improved benchmarking and better comparability of bids. So some of the things that we have been trying to promote in our cooperation with the Japanese authorities. There will be better disclosure of bid details. So after the tenders and after the award, basically there would be publication of what the other consortia also offered, and not just the winning one, which would bring more transparency, I mean, on the bids, and hopefully then lead to better results in next rounds and more competitive bids, as competitors can see what were the details that resolved the like the winning bid. There's decreasing emphasis on track record, which we are not sure if we are very happy, because European operators have the best track record if you look at the worldwide track record in these projects. And then there's the idea of limiting the successful bidding by bidder, so that same thing that happened in the first round, where one consortium took all the three tenders, that wouldn't be repeated, that there would be some sort of cap either by gigawatt side or otherwise. But this is yet in the air. So this proposal will be further discussed. We will be there discussing these with the Japanese authorities, hopefully quite soon. And the round one is likely to be merged with round 3 of tendering, so probably launched at the end of this year. Next slide, please. So finally, some of the objectives that the EU has here. As I explained earlier, in the EU, so in the EU member states who conduct these tenders, there's more emphasis on price, and this is the direction where we hope the Japanese to go as well, and to underpin that with a robust pre-selection criteria, so that they wouldn't be so much on the non-price criteria, but just kind of like hurdle. If you manage to go over that hurdle on requirements of that you have enough experience and financing and so forth, you would then start competing, hopefully mainly or principally on the basis of price. We hope for improved measurability and transparency. As I said, things seem to be going to that direction. We'll have to see how they materialize in the next round, but that seems to be the direction of the Japanese authorities. And that obviously what we hope as well would be non-discrimination between Japanese and overseas operators. Again, one of the issues which is not just typical for this sector, but for all the tenders in Japan, and there is this doubt, and this is something where we need to remain extremely vigilant, obviously with the challenge that we don't have similar legal measures at our disposal as there are for those tenders which are covered by EPA and the WTO government procurement agreement. I think I stop here. I'll just remind you, I think that you have already received an invitation to a seminar we are organizing here in Japan that will be available online as well. It will take place next Monday. It's on offshore wind. It's on development of regulatory cooperation between EU and Japan. And there is a part on tendering there as well. And there are other things on standardization, certification, access to vessels, but this one will be one of them. So you are welcome to participate in that. To the extent there are in the audience anybody who is or those who are here in Tokyo, I think that the last day to register for in-person participation is going to be today. So I recommend that you do it. I have nothing more. Thank you very much once more.
Thank you very much, Ilka. Yet again, a very detailed and precise presentation. I will not take too much time because we are lagging a little bit behind, but that happens when something is very interesting like this. It's sure that a level playing field is still far away, but the EU is trying its best to convince the Japanese government to open the market more for also companies coming from the EU, because we have a lot of expertise and know-how to share with all the Japanese entities. So we are there to assist them. So now we have a company, a Flemish company, Veldeman Group, which has already done quite some good business in the Tokyo area, especially in the field of the Olympic Summer Games, which should have been in 2020, but was in fact last year, if I recall good. With all these COVID years, you tend to forget some years. But Mr. Ludo Ost will share with us all his knowledge he has taken aboard during this process of tendering and winning a tender, a big tender for the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Summer Games. So without further ado, Ludo, you have the floor. Can you share your presentation, please? Can take a while because you mentioned it is quite...
Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's already positive. Then I will also share my
that's the
camera.
Camera is okay. And now
I can share my presentation. Okay.
Yeah.
Give me some yes, one moment.
It will go.
Is that okay?
Yeah, we see your screen, and can you open it in presentation mode? Then it's even better.
I will try.
It's in the bottom.
I can do it, but
yeah, there it is. If you click on that one, it should work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the floor is yours, Ludo. Thank you very much.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Ludo Ost, and before talking about my experience in Japan, I will give you, first of all, a very short presentation of what we are doing exactly. Is this working? Oh, Jesus. That's the problem. I can't.
You can navigate this presentation normally?
No, I can't.
It doesn't work. Wait.
I will.
Did you send us the presentation?
No, because it's too heavy. Let me. Oh, Jesus.
No worries.
I have to go out again. What can we do now?
Yeah, if you can maybe just. Now it's going. It's going.
Yeah, you went to the next slide.
It's going, but that's not the goal. Perhaps it's. Yeah. You can see this. Yeah.
Yeah. You can move the
just
slides.
to present myself, I'm working. This is working. I'm working 22 years for Veldeman as a responsible person for the sales, and especially international sales. Just for information, one of my hobbies is traveling. Otherwise, you don't. I've been 30 times to Japan, at least in my career. And if you don't like it, you don't do it, of course. And the picture you can see on the bottom is a picture from the only glacier in the world in Argentina, which is still growing. It's the Pirito Moreno, just for the information, because we have a company in Chile. We are based in Brie, in Belgium. That's our head office. You can see in the middle, the green point. It's here that we do the production and that we develop. I immediately come to what we do. We have also a company in the United States, Pennsylvania. In Chile, we opened back 9 years ago. And since 25 years, we are also active in Australia. As you can see, the green points, we have an own office, and all the yellow points, it's where we have business. And if you look to the right, the island of Japan is quite important for our company, as we do between 10 and 20% of our sales, depending on the years, of course, in Japan. So it's very important. This gives you an idea of the history of our company. I won't jump into details, but we have more than 50 years of experience as a company. And here you have some key figures. In fact, we do 4 things. We develop, we manufacture, we sell, and we rent tents or temporary structures, because the new products we develop are no longer tents, in my opinions. You talk more about buildings or structures, semi-permanent or permanent, depending on how you look to it. The strengths of our company, quality is very important for us. We are not a price-driven company. And for Japan, that is important. I will explain later on why. We have in-house manufacturing and experience, of course. These are all machines we use. Our mission is that more and more we are a customer-driven specialist in the sales and rental of tents or temporary structures, and we have more and more total solutions. The activities where we are active in is, first of all, at the right side, the events as such, where we do rental. For the people living in Belgium, we do 17 big festivals in Europe. One of them is Werchter, but also in Germany, in Holland. We also sell permanent sport halls. We have a quite important track record in military structures. We sell in 35 countries to 10 rental companies, where one of them is Japan. I come to that immediately. We have a lot of industrial business as well, rental as sales. And also we rent to retailers like Lidl, Aldi, all these names. In Chile, we are active in the mining business, totally different. It's industrial, where you can see what we do. We are specialized in truck shops, but also storage. One of our important customers over there is Codelco, the only government-owned mine. Chile is delivering 50% of the copper in the whole world. So for us, this is a quite important market, and our business is also growing there. In the Andes Mountains, we talk about snow. This is the covering for the sunshine. Okay, there I come. First of all, talking about Japan, if we talk about the Olympic Games, because we won a big job for Japan Tokyo 2020. But why do you win such a job? It's because you have, of course, experience and a track record. We have been delivering a lot for London 2012. In fact, we delivered for 5 main sites at the Olympic Games in 2012. In total, 18,000 square meters of structures, where some of them were double-deckers. That means 2 stories, 2 levels of structures with modern glass looking. This was an important reference for us in order to come into Japan. We also delivered for the Olympic Winter Games in South Korea, where we delivered 12,000 square meters of structures for South Korea 2018. And now we come to Tokyo, Tokyo 2020. I will explain because I'm very sorry for that. Haven't had the time to prepare a detailed presentation, but I will explain. First of all, in Japan, we have a partner since now more than 20 years. The partner's name is called Nishio. And I have to say, when we started, it was those Japanese people came to visit our company. And one of the reasons why they became a customer is because we were quite flexible, because they asked that the tent, the structure, would comply with typhoon winds. And if you talk about typhoon winds, this is not realistic because you talk about wind speeds of more than 200 kilometers an hour. But in fact, we were able to manufacture, to develop structures who were much stronger than what customers are used to in the other places in the world, like Europe. And I have to say, throughout the years, our relationship with our Japanese customer became more and more intensive. To give you an idea, one of the big projects we delivered before the Olympic Games was as everybody knows, in Fukushima, there was a nuclear disaster, a big disaster, and we delivered a lot of structures to our Japanese partner who installed them in the neighborhood of Fukushima. In fact, to store the shit, like the Japanese people say. So the rest of the toilets and whatever from families who was all contaminated. And if you talk about Tokyo 2020, in fact, I'm a member of a Belgium business club, which is called BSTC, Belgium Sports and Technology Club. And in 2015, so 5 years before the Olympic Games, we had the first visit to the organizing committee in Japan, where we had the opportunity to present our experience and the solutions we could deliver. Very important to mention is that from the beginning, we combined our forces, so Veldeman with its own experience, and our local customer, Nishio. If you talk about the Olympic Games in Japan, I don't know any country in the world where they have been starting well in advance with this process to look for structures and tents, but also they are very severe on building codes. And if you say building codes, I mean wind loads. Even in summertime or after summer, there are typhoons with very high wind loads, which can cause dramatic situations if you are not prepared for that. And so 2015 we started, and when the years went through, we went again to the Olympic Committee, and the first tenders came out. And honestly speaking, for Veldeman, it was impossible to go through those tenders directly because you have the language, you have the culture, you have the legal issues. There is a long list of things which, in my opinion, small and medium companies or medium companies like ours cannot go through without a local partner. So our local partner went through this process, and we immediately or always supported them with the necessary technical information about the products, with of course, the financial information about the products. And step by step, before that the decision came, we knew that, yeah, we get more and more into the game. And as I told you, in my opinion, Japan is an exception in that 1 year before the games, and everybody will remember March 2022, it was about the 17th when Corona when the restaurants were closed in Belgium.
Ludo, may I intervene shortly?
Yes.
Can you? Is it possible to round up in about 2 minutes?
I'm sorry. I have finished that.
Okay, sorry about
I will. So I will round up. What I want to say is, so you need a local partner in order to be capable to get big deals. And we are talking about deals between 6 million and 10 million in this case for these 400 structures which we delivered. And what I want to tell to the people interested in this is put the necessary time in selecting the right partner. And this takes time in Japan. It takes, in my opinion, months, years. But once you have selected them, this can be the base for a bright future. That's in a nutshell what I want to tell about. Of course, I have much more details, but this was impossible for this presentation.
Thank you very much, Ludo, for this indeed presentation you've given us. And the people attending here can always, I presume, reach out to you and share the knowledge you have gained during the years. I will not take too much time because we are indeed lagging behind, but now it's Bojan Pavlik. He's from the European Commission and taking charge of the new, not so new anymore, but new access to procurement tool. And there is also a focus on Japan after they started with Canada. So Bojan, we are looking forward to hearing from your side how one and other things go. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Bojan Pavlik from the European Commission. I'm the unit for regulatory cooperation and public procurement. As an announcer, I will give you a brief overview of our latest tool called Access to Procurement Markets. If somebody just can confirm that you see my screen.
Yeah, we see you and the screen. And
okay,
Ludo, can I ask you to shut down the camera, please? So it's better to follow what the president. Thank you very much, Ludo.
Okay, I will start with good old Google because it's the easiest way to find. You put access to market. And the first link that you will have it's our access to market tool. It's not only about procurement. This tool is about many things, but today I talk only about procurement. You scroll down and you will see My Trade Assistant, and you will see option procurement. So just to give you a bit of a background why we developed and why we're developing this tool, because we have with many countries so-called trade agreements, and we are also a member of the government procurement agreement with WTO. And in a majority of our trade agreements, there is always a procurement chapter because we try to ensure that our companies have access to the procurement markets. That doesn't mean that you have access to the whole procurement market. You have access to what is negotiated, and three things are always negotiated. It's the thresholds, and also sectors and so-called coverage of the procurement market. In our EPA, it was already presented, so I will not go into details. We have also a procurement chapter, and we developed those tools. I heard it, as you heard already in the presentation of previous colleagues, there is a problem with transparency, but not only with Japan. It's always transparency is always a bit of an issue, and we wanted to help not only our companies, but maybe even procuring entities in third countries to better understand their commitments under the trade agreements. In this case, we developed for the time being for two countries, because you can see select a country, Canada and Japan, and we are working. We will soon work on that, adding a third country this year and then another country. So this tool is constantly in the progress, and we are constantly adding new markets. So to be very simple, for example, you see a tender in Japan and you're interested, whether I could apply for this tender. So you will first click to Japan and then search. So here you can put entity, but and the governmental level. I will first put governmental level, but you can also put directly the entity if you know which entity the tender is published with. I will put, for example, one of the core cities, and I will choose the first city, Akashi. So when the contract entities are procuring, they can either procure in goods, services, or construction services. You have to choose which subject matter. For example, you saw procurement of IT goods. Then you have to put estimated value. Sometimes estimated value is already of the contract is already put in the public in the tender notice. Sometimes it's not. In the case when it's not, you should guess. And you see it's in Japanese yen. So I will, for example, put only in this case 10,000 Japanese yen, and let's see what happened. I will put next. And you will get assessment. In this case, you will get assessment that there is no obligation to accept bids from EU companies because this procurement is not covered. Why it's not covered? Because the threshold for the tender is too low. That doesn't mean that maybe Japanese procuring entity for some reason will not accept your tender, but there's just no legal international commitment for them to do it. Let me now put a higher value. I think I will put many zeros so we are sure that it's covered. So let me see. Now we'll check next. And you see now assessment is positive, that based on the information you provided, meaning the contracting entity, it was the city Akashi, if I remember correctly, the coverage, in this case goods, and the threshold is covered by the EPA commitment. So here you got a positive assessment. I would also like to say this is just information tool, of course. The decision is with the contract entities. This is something that will help companies or contract authorities to better see what is there any commitments under the trade agreements. Now I will put one more because we are out of time. One more. I will change the entity to show you something else. So in this case, I will go to others. I will search and I will find environmental, just a second, restoration and conservation agency. Select. In this case, before we selected goods, I will, in this case, select services. Again, to be sure, I'm going to put a lot of zeros so I know that it's covered by the EPA. Next. And now you got a question. So you see there is not still assessment. There is now the whole list of services that it's requested. For example, in the tender, these are imaginary tender notice. They can read food services, beverage services, and so on. So if, for example, if you see the tender is looking for food serving services, you will click on select and negative. We got a negative reply because this is not, there is no obligation from procuring entity to consider bids from EU companies for the in this case, because the food services are not covered by the EPA. But let's choose another service, for example, telecommunication related service. Select negative again. Let me computer and related services. Positive. So this is example where we have a positive reply because the computer and related services are covered by EPA. So this is basically it. You see, it is very simple and effective tool. We hope it will be helpful when you are looking at the tenders in Japanese market. Also, if you are maybe present in Canada, I will not do a presentation, but it's the same. It's the same functioning system. You can also check procurement coverage in Canada as well. And as I said, we will keep adding countries to this list. Thank you very much. And then if you have further questions, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Bojan. It looks very, very user-friendly, but it was quite difficult, I would imagine, to present it in such a short time notice. So perhaps in due time we should organize a specific session only on this tool, and we can also broaden it to the overall tool of the EU. So we can make a session on how to use this procurement tool, as many more countries will follow. So it will be a very, I think, necessary tool for all of our companies when they want to do business abroad. Then especially also take use of this tool you have delivered. Okay, just to remind, this session is being recorded, so you can look back after we have put it on the website, and also the presentations will be available after the webinar as soon as possible. Before we go to the question and answer session, there have been many questions, very interesting questions, as the presentations were also very interesting. That's logical. We give the floor for 2 minutes or 1 or 2 minutes to Marta Krakowiak. She is one of the people in the consortium Extra Light, and they also focus on Japan especially. So Marta, you can normally open your mic and your camera, and please explain in 1 or 2 minutes what Extra Light is all about and in what way you can assist companies from Europe in your endeavors. Thank you very much.
Hello everybody. Do you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for this possibility to introduce briefly Extra Light. So we are the project, European project co-financed by the COSME program, the same as the GOOSE one. And we share with the GOOSE project the target market of Japan. And we are quite a focused project because we are addressing a very specific sector, that is the lighting sector. And we just wanted to take the opportunity to get some, let's say, general overview of the public procurement in Japan, thanks to this webinar organized by GOOSE, and that we are going to organize also within our project a specific training program, but very, let's say, we would like to customize it to our companies that comes from the lighting sector and cover, let's say, the whole lighting value chain. So this is just shortly from us, and I'm very happy to be here. And we are representing just to highlight the lighting companies from the lighting clusters from Italy, from France, from Spain, and also from Austria. And ELCA, that is coordinating the project, is the European Lighting Cluster Alliance. So we are, let's say, sort of network of clusters that gathers these clusters and lead them in the Extra Light project. So this is only from my side, and I'm very happy to have the possibility to get in contact with all the experts that I would like to contact after this webinar, because maybe we can have some joint collaboration opportunities to set in the future. So thank you very much for the GOOSE project to having us here. And I put a lot of questions in the chat.
Yeah, I've seen it. So you've taken this opportunity very, very good. Ilke, I leave the floor for yours to moderate the Q&A here. Thank you very much.
Hello. Yeah, okay, we're lagging a bit behind, so we will start with the question. So Likkel, I think the first one will be for you. So the first question was, when encouraging a partner to look for business opportunities through the Japanese tender platform, the company received the following reaction: fine, but aren't most Japanese local tender rigged? So meaning that the requirements and the selected supplier has been actually matched from the start, but just to be compliant with the public requirement, they go to the public tender process at the final stage in the process. So in short, how can we make sure we are not losing our time with tenders that are actually decided, even if this is not apparent so?
I think the observation is correct that in quite a few cases the desired supplier is already lined up, and it is probably how can you find out whether it's whether this is the case? It is again, if the specifications point towards a specific product offered by a specific supplier, that's basically the way you can you can assess it. And that's why I also try to explain in my presentation is that you need to influence the drafting of specifications at an earlier stage. I don't know what kind of product the person who asked the question had. Look, if it's a contract that's being renewed every year, then you can then you should try to get in touch with the office that is doing that and make sure that your product is being considered as well. Then you can see whether you have a chance. But yeah, it's very difficult to. I think it's right that for many government organizations, the fact that they need to do all kinds of public procurement procedures is more like an administrative necessity in order to award a contract to a supplier that they already have in mind. I think that's correct. That observation is right.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. If there are any other speakers who would like to comment or say something extra, please intervene. Dirk, if you can.
Yes, well, I appear again on the screen. So yes, I think Nicola is of course right. This is the way things have been doing in Japan, but this is also why we have the EPA to change this way of thinking, at least in certain government administrations or public procurement agencies. I think if you look at the case that was discussed by ILCA, so the offshore wind procurement case, there you see that there was an unexpected winner. And so it's not always the case that the company that expects to win, that it also gets the tender. And particularly when it comes to tenders concerning climate change or concerning environmental matters, where European companies have an advantage, there I would say it's worthwhile trying to get into that market. And the winner is not always decided beforehand.
So this leads me actually to the second question, which was to which extent the EPA agreement is respected by the Japanese public authorities. So do we see an evolution over there? Are they more open to consider bids with foreign or EU providers? I think.
If I may answer that question as well, it's as we are looking into it. What we see thus far is that many organizations are doing the minimum. I would say they could do more. There are some exceptions. Tokyo Metro, the operator of most of the subway network in Tokyo, has taken quite a positive attitude towards it and is providing much more information than it did before that. But other organizations are less forthcoming and taking a more positive attitude in this. And actually, we are also planning to do a survey this year again and see how the attitude has changed. I think for the most of the organizations, the EPA did not have that much of an impact in their daily practice, and they just continued with the way of working that they were used to. I think there is more of an. I think the EU suppliers that are aiming for contracts with Japanese government, I think they need to use the EPA as a tool in order to point out to their Japanese counterparts, this is what we agreed upon. And and we would like to see you also take a positive attitude towards it. Just for the previous question, one thing that I would like to mention with rigged or already rigged bids and procedures I think and that in wind in the wind auctions, the approach has been different. It's of course a new ball game for the Japanese government. I think also for EU companies that are looking for public sector opportunities, look more at the contracts where they have overall greatest value evaluations instead of the ones where price is the decisive factor in awarding a contract. Those procedures will give you a much more a better chance of presenting your case and making a good proposal. And fortunately, the acceptance of overall greatest value methods in determining a winner is growing, in particular in developmental contracts in the IT related to IT and also public works. So that's perhaps also something that EU companies can consider.
Okay, thank you. So I think the next question, like every presenter or almost every presenter talked about the Japanese partner. So the next question is it possible to participate as subcontractor of a Japanese company? I think this question is partly answered, but I don't know if you have anything other to say. Is it the best option? It's something you mentioned during your presentation. Is it possible without a Japanese partner? That is maybe a better question. Mikkel, if
as a subcontractor in a joint venture, you mean, or as a subcontractor?
As a subcontractor as such. Oh yeah, if you could elaborate on the two options, that would be great.
Well, there are two different things, of course. If you join as joint venture, or if you're a subcontractor. If you're a subcontractor, then you have a business relationship with the main contractor, and the main contractor then has a business with the government. The main contractor will have to, of course, provide information who their subcontractors are. That's quite common nowadays. But there are, as far as I know, no legal limit, no legal barriers towards a foreign company acting as a subcontractor. But that burden to arrange it will be placed on the main contractor, that is in the direct partner of the business partner of the government entity. As far as I know, there are also no legal requirements with regards to being a member of a joint venture as a foreign company. So I don't know. That really depends on there are so many factors in play and so many different kinds of products and projects. So as far as I know, there are no legal limits towards barring foreign companies from projects, unless there is something like national security in place. And again, think of telecommunications. They are also now working on additional measures with regards to cloud computing, provision of cloud computing services, etc. So, but in most regular contracts, that there should not be any barriers.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is maybe a bit related. So do the public suppliers or SMEs have to be accepted and registered to any public list of bidders to be able to participate in the public procurement? And if so, is this process open also to EU SMEs, and where to find the information on the application procedure? That's a big question.
Yes, you need to register as a supplier, and you will be put in a roster. National government has a common supplier system, so you apply with one ministry, then that will be valid with all ministries and national government organizations. At the sub-central level, such as Tokyo and the prefectures and designated cities, you will have to register as a supplier with each entity individually. That's for goods and services. If you want to be involved in construction of public works, there's a different structure procedure in place, which is quite complex and time consuming. Also, one of the reasons still why many foreign companies active in that sector shy away from acting as a direct partner of government organization and instead do it via a Japanese partner. So yes, you have to do it. Our help desk also provides information on it. We actually also support EU SMEs with obtaining the common qualification for goods and services. So in that case, please look at our website and find the information there.
Okay, thank you. And then so I think you mentioned that at the end only one Japanese company is participating to the tender. So one question related to that: why Japanese companies do not take part in public procurement? Is this process too complicated, or are there any other issues?
I think on the one hand, it's well, you can look at it at different angles. I think there are also many Japanese companies that also think the paperwork is too much of a hassle. And perhaps they also think that because there is one company that has monopolized a certain goods and service, it doesn't warrant the effort of doing so, of placing and preparing a bid themselves as well. It is difficult to say. On the one hand, look at the overall picture. I think there you could say that on the one hand there are government entities that would like to have more providers of particular services, where they only get one, and also in many cases get none, and then you get basically a circle of where the price goes up. And until the expected price or the projected price is high enough that there is one supplier, and they then place a bid, and in the end, the taxpayer is not really helped with this. But yeah, it's difficult to say like if there is one pattern of with regard to this phenomena, whether it's because it's too difficult or whether there are just few suppliers available.
Okay. Well, thank you for your answers. I see that Mr. Druiver has answered the question of the company Vinnie Green Group. So I think most of the questions are answered. If not, please write something in the chat. But I think we're at the end, so 20 minutes. We're 20 minutes delayed. I don't know, Arnoud, if you want to close this session. I would like to, if you're interested in this project and following this project and the tenders, please subscribe or go to our website, which I will mention in the chat right now, projectgoose.eu, and subscribe so you can follow all the relevant news. So Arnoud, I will stop here.
Thank you very much for doing a great job there. Yeah, sorry, Mr.
If I can touch it, because I just saw a question.
Okay.
I think it was for me. Is it possible to search tenders by specific product or services? Just to be clear on access to procurement market, you don't find the tenders. So basically, what you check there, if the tender you found should be covered by EPA or GPA commitments. Tenders you will find either on JETRO website, which publish tender of Japanese authorities, and also on Campo website. And I also saw on GOOSE website sometimes.
GOOSE, yes, that's what I wanted to say. That we are quite complementary. That's why we reached out to you as a consortium to work together, as you have indeed your task to play, or your role to play, and we have ours, and we are trying to find the most relevant procurement opportunities for all of our companies coming from all these areas of Europe, and you have your role to play to say which tenders would make sense to compete in, because it would be a disaster if you put all efforts into a tender and then after a month you realize in fact we were not allowed to apply. So that's indeed the importance of your tool of the Commission, and we are looking forward to cooperate even more in the nearby future. I would like to end this this extensive webinar with extensive information, if I might, and also make a little bit an announcement for next week. Already we have our 4th webinar of the 5 we are organizing, and the 4th webinar will deal the Vietnamese market, which is yet again a total different market to approach with other challenges, let's call it challenges and opportunities and not problems, but make it challenges, and challenges are there to make opportunities of these challenges. So that's about it. I would like to thank all speakers today for delivering very, very detailed information. And yet again, this is only the beginning and not the end of the story. This is only the beginning of the first part. The project will go on for 2 more years, and the idea is after our project that companies coming from Europe and the SMEs especially will find it easier to find firstly opportunities, secondly make a smooth decision if participating makes sense, and thirdly how and which strategy they should apply to win a contract. So there in these 3 areas we are there to assist you all the way down the road to hopefully winning contracts, and we have a whole area of tools available. But please continue and register to follow us and register on our website, and you will see all opportunities there at your disposal every day and again. So thank you very much. And okay, it has taken this time a little bit more time, but I'm quite confident. I see still that more than 20 people are logged in, that it was quite fruitful. And yet again, we are looking forward meeting you in real life, hopefully very soon, perhaps at the Export Fair already for the Flemish company next month. That would be a nice occasion to already have some meetings with all of you. So have a nice day and have a nice continuation of the week, and see you later. Bye-bye.